Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them. Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and today's guest is a very special guest. I'm talking about Brandish Gilhelm, also known as Henkerin Ferinale, and also known as Runehammer. He's the game designer, artist, and YouTuber behind Index Card RPG, and more recently, School and Crawl. But before we get into that, I would like to remind you to subscribe to our show wherever you listen to your podcast, so you're updated when we release new episodes. And please, if you like the show, leave us a review and support us however you can. We have links on the show notes for books you can buy or ways you can pay us a coffee to keep the podcast going. And now, getting back to Brandish and Henkerin. We talked about his journey as an RPG creator, his fascination with, game design and art, and exploring very different ways to express himself. He talked about his fascinating life and lessons he learned. Talked about daydreaming and how this affects his belief system. Talked about his hobby as boxing and how this affects his hobby and affects his mental health. We talk about an accident that almost killed him and how that changed his life and gave him new perspectives and new ways to see things and really changed the way he approached his work and the things he has to do. We talked about game design from school very deeply and we go into various details of how this game is different from all the previous work that he has done. We talked about meditation. We talked about many interesting things. It was a great chat. Brandish has a lot to share and a lot to teach us. I'm very grateful he was on the show, so I hope you enjoy it as much as we did, and let's get weird with Brandish Gilhelm. Hello, Brandon. Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm a huge fan of your work with Runehammer. And how are you, my friend?
Yo, I'm doing good, Diogo. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. I'm excited to talk about game design, art, and creativity, and your history in this. But before we start, Brandon, for forever the wonderful weirdos out there that might not know who are you, what is Runehammer, what is that you do? Can you, in your own words, tell the weirdos there who is Brandon? What is that you do? And if you can you share just a small weird detail about you, about your life? Maybe a weird habit or anything like this?
Well, yeah, I guess Runehammer, if you're not familiar with it, is my sort of RPG and a few novels as well, publishing label that I do. I kind of been doing it my entire life, really. I've worked
Wow.
in the video game industry for a couple of decades, but really, I was kind of doing the same things. I was doing art and writing. And that's really all I've kind of ever done. I was a waiter once, but I was a terrible waiter. Um, but yeah, so you can find me under Runehammer anywhere on the internet. I kind of really own that word, so it's really easy to look me up and find all my craziness. I live in Philly, in PA, in the East Coast of the U.S. And my weird habit, my my weird habit is that I am an early person. So I live in the 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. lifestyle. And I've noticed more and more these days that is somewhat unusual. A lot of people seem to be up later than me. So I am totally a hardcore morning person. That's the weird thing you might not know about me.
Yeah. Have you ever been, a morning person or, you know, I kind of want to because I read all these books about people that goes you have to sleep early and rise early so
Right.
like your day is more efficient in some way. But I remember like a joke from Adam Sandler saying he once woke up at 4 in the morning and he's gonna oh yeah I'm gonna be one of those persons that wake up this early and he makes breakfast, go for a walk, and then makes another breakfast, and then it's 11 a.m. it's a meeting, and he's like how much this day is gonna go for,
Yeah. Yeah. The
something like
day feels really long when you get up early.
yeah. Have you ever been an early riser, or is this a habit that you uh created and cultivated
Well,
after you grew up?
I think honestly, I am like a very like pendulum kind of style person. I will love something for like 3 to 5 years, and then I will absolutely hate it for 3 to 5 years. Then I will go back to loving it, and then I will repeat that process over and over with all kinds of things. So I'll be like
Oh,
a hardcore morning person for quite a while, and then I'll be like, "What have I been doing with my life? I've been a fool," and then I'll become like a total night owl, like I always just want to switch it up.
yeah. But do you remember when you made the switch to becoming an early person recently, or is this been going for a while? What
Hmm.
motivated you, or was it just something that happened?
Well, yeah, I think we kind of when we partied ourselves out on Philadelphia. So we moved to Philadelphia right before the pandemic, right? And so, like so many people, we kind of the only way to deal with the pandemic is like kind of getting into like a bit of a party lifestyle, and it finally kind of petered out. Like, okay, okay, enough of that. We got to like get back to normal life now. That got a little crazy. And then when sort of
Yeah.
quote unquote normal life, if there's even such a thing, when that kind of came back, um, then it came back with a vengeance. It was like back into the gym, eat your vegetables, do your daily breathing meditation, like let's get into the yoga studio, like let's bring it all together. So that's the current phase that we're in right now.
Nice. I kind of went through something like this. In 2021, I had an anxiety attack, and I decided to tackle it with anything that I could, like eating better, doing gym, meditation,
Yeah.
and things like this. And how did you attack that all at the same time during the pandemic, or did you practice any of this before? You always seemed like a fit person, so you were
Well,
always into exercise and eating well,
yeah.
and meditation was part of your life before the pandemic, or something that you started after too.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's widely known quite yet about me, but I am an amputee, so I only have one leg. And
Oh,
since that happened to me, which was 15 years ago now, when something like that happens to you, it's kind of mandatory actually that you pull it together. Like the
yeah.
statistics of like people having really bad things happen to them after something like that are really working against you. So the minute that you get into something that sort of catastrophic, you like kind of run out of options. Like you have to
Yeah,
like
wake up call, right?
it's a wake and you have to stay fit or you will find yourself like unable to walk. Like not to be too dark about it or anything, but you really have to like stay ahead and work twice as hard as the next guy. So ever since that happened, I've been kind of in that mode. So yeah, I'm kind of a warrior on that front. I do really good. Um, but yeah, I think the pandemic was one of the first times it was kind of hard to really stay at your maximum self while you're kind of hiding out and didn't know what was going
Oh
to
yeah.
happen to the world.
Yeah. I always had anxiety, but I during the pandemic was the thing that made me, go seek help because it got to a level that I wasn't function. I was basically just writing RPGs and ignoring the rest of my life.
Right,
So
right.
yeah. So it had this side. Like I wrote 5 games in 2021, but I neglected my health, my relationships, and yeah, those things are kind of a wake up call, and kind of it's terrible that happens, but sometimes we see like, yeah, well, at least I got this together, and I'm better than before in a way. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's completely different, but I mean, yeah. Runehammer, Brandon, you said that you had the name Runehammer is basically yours now. How did you came up with that name? Does it have anything to do with something that you liked it before, or inspired by any sort of fiction or writers or anything like this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always been a sort of a kind of a pagan person. I don't know if am qualified to actually say that I'm pagan. I think you need some kind of card for that, and I don't have that
Do
card.
you?
But I've always been sort of that way. I've always had a very kind of a taste for extremely old things, and they've always just appealed to me a lot more than things from the recent few thousand years. I've always sort of been enamored by the kind of the Bronze Age, like something about it sort of has always called to me in a way I don't even fully know. Um, so yeah, way back, oh geez, this must have been 2010 or so. Was when I actually got a big tattoo of Mjolnir, just like the design that's on my wall back there in stained glass, on like the
Yeah.
back of my neck, and it was like kind of a sublime tattoo experience. Like the base of your skull and stuff is like really kind of like heavy vibrations going on. And I kind of Mjolnir is of course Thor's hammer, but I kind of nicknamed it the Runehammer. And I don't know why I did. I just did that in my own head because Mjolnir is kind of a silly word in English. It doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
So I just sort of nicknamed it that, and it just sort of began. I just sort of started nicknaming things Runehammer. I would call things, this is the Runehammer cheeseburger right here. Like I'm having a barbecue, and that's the cheeseburger I'm presenting, or whatever. It just sort of started being like a nickname that I
Nice.
was
Yeah.
giving things. And so when I started writing more and more, I almost didn't even choose it. It was
It
just
shows
totally
you in a
natural.
way,
Of
like,
course
yeah.
it's going to be Runehammer. Like Runehammer is what I
Yeah.
call everything. Like that's the nickname of my bicycle. Like so of course it's
That's
going to be
great.
called
Yeah.
Runehammer.
Yeah, I love it. It's like it's very you. So that's how it's so important, so pregnant too. It's speaks to who are you in a way. So that's
Yeah.
great. Bruno, we always ask here people to because it is a podcast about being weird and the weird things that we like and love. And I like to ask the guests here to if they can define what is weird for you. How do you see the weird in the world, in your work, and how do you seek to emulate it in the things that you do and
Hmm.
experience?
Well, I guess that word has two invocations for me when I think of the word weird. I guess the first one would be like unusual. So anytime you look around your culture, your immediate culture that you're in, I guess, I live in a big, big city. So for me, it's kind of the neighborhood. That's kind of my unit of culture that I live in. And I'm definitely unusual in that unit of culture. There's
How
not a
so?
lot of people that are kind of like me running around,
Yeah,
and you get a
yeah,
reminder of it every once in a while. You got to step outside yourself and look around a little bit and like, wow, I am a little bit odd and unusual. So I think that's definitely weird. People are always unusual, and I love that. I'm always drawn to the unusual. But then also, I think the word weird has a strange kind of oh, I don't know, almost like a Bigfoot kind of feel to it, almost like like a Loch Ness, kind of cryptozoology kind of a feel. Like there's some kind of a strange mythology around the word weird. Like weird is like aliens abducting people, and weird is like curses from witches in like Salem times, and weird is like H.P. Lovecraft stuff, and like
the
weird isn't
otherworldly,
just
right?
unusual. It's also something a little more strange. Not just like, oh, look, that fire hydrant is painted yellow. That's unusual. Yeah, but that's not weird.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
so it's
something
more than
out of
unusual.
our sense of reality, like the otherworldly, something
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we
otherworldly. There we go. There's
yeah
a fanciful kind of oddity to being weird, and I think that's where I really bond with, so-called weirdos. Is this kind
yeah
of I don't know if it's just imagining and just sort of daydreaming, or if it's actually, in some cases, it's almost like a belief system. Like, some sort of weirdos actually do believe like there's a deeper and bigger universe than we kind of perceive. And I'm not just, fancifully thinking about this stuff. this is the stuff. This is real stuff. Like, there's weird stuff out there. That's true. We just may not have access to it because the universe is so large and diverse. And so I'm thinking about actual stuff. Like, I think that's when you get into the most interesting part of weirdness. Um, is like
When
the
you,
little scene that you believe is real. But just because we don't have like solid proof about it or access to it, maybe it's far away in time, or maybe it's far away in space, or far away in some other measurement of distance we don't fully understand. But you think it's there, or you feel that it's real or it's there. And I think that to me is kind of that's my pillar of weirdness, is really sort of
and
believing in sort of strange things, or sort of
yeah,
adventurous or epic things that are kind of out there. They're still there, or they're with us in some way.
yeah. And do you have anything like this for you? Something uh, supernatural, weird, or otherworldly that you believe in that I don't
Hmm.
know helps you see the world in a different light?
Yeah, I think I do. That's a cool question. But it one of the degrees that I did when I was doing college was anthropology, and one of the things you quickly learn with archaeology and anthropology is that there are these huge swaths of undiscovered data on Earth, and
Hmm.
um, like the city of Corral is a perfect example in South America. So it's this, sort of huge pyramid style city that's been discovered in the last 10 years, that's older than the pyramids in Egypt. And
Wow.
for a long time, South American ancient culture has been seen as relatively young. But
Oh
this
yeah.
but
There's
this
a lot of we
completely
don't know. Yeah.
yeah, but this completely throws that out the window. And so
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
of the things that I've always held kind of sacred in my heart, even from a young age, is that there is this huge portion that we don't know about. And it's way
Yeah.
bigger than any of us think it is. And it's just been whittled away by weather. It's just gone. But
Yeah.
it was
Have you
there.
seen
Yeah.
Have you seen this documentary called Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix? Which is
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Another
I
great
mean
one is Lost Cities on National Geographic. So there's a guy specializing in finding forgotten cities, trying to find the big ones, and they're
yeah,
they're absolutely amazing. And to me, it speaks to a time that's kind of like the Aquilonian area, or like Lemuria, like these legendary epochs of time that are completely undocumented. And like people were
yeah.
walking around, and they were complicated. They had metal, they had wheels, they
And
had all
we are
kinds of
fascinated by
complex
it
culture.
because we write fiction about this lost age that people are looking for and
Yeah,
we all and there are some similarities. I mean, I watched that ancient apocalypse documentary, and there's a lot of stuff that I try not to think as true, but it's great inspiration for gaming. Like
yeah,
there's a lot of stories, a lot of weird stuff, like the maps, the ancient maps that show. I think it's Antarctica before Antarctica was discovered. It's like, what the fuck is that? How do they know it's there? And then a few years later, no maps show it because it hasn't been discovered by the people of this age. So that
yeah.
is
It's craziness.
really fascinating. And you were talking about South America. Since I'm writing Primal Quest, I'm kind of studying prehistory, and I'm studying prehistory of South America too. And there's a lot of things that people are discovering right now because for a long time, research is financed by money, and North America and Europe has a lot more money than South America. So
Hmm.
the study and the research in South America lacks a lot compared to other places. And just now they're starting to invest more here in like for a long time we thought the people in like in prehistoric Amazon would just nowadays they didn't have villages, but now they can like scan the forest with lasers. They didn't
Yeah.
have this technology before, and they find cities, they find roads,
Yep.
roads connecting all these places, and sacred places, sacred locations that have buildings aligned with stars like we see in ancient civilizations.
Yep.
all that in the Amazon forest, then we 10, 20 years ago, we thought it was just like some natives with nomads. They didn't have proper cities or villages or houses. They were just traveling with small, straw houses or things like this. It's
Right.
nothing like this.
Yeah, I think
It's
I think
fantastic.
having a bigger view of seeing what we don't know and basically giving the benefit of the doubt to the human
Yeah,
race. Like
yeah,
just because you don't know it, the human race is huge and really old and really
oh yeah,
industrious. We just lost a huge portion of cool stuff, and people were living huge adventurous lives in these
yeah,
lost times, and that to me is one of the like the batteries that fuel a lot of what I like to imagine,
yeah.
is that it must
There,
have just been an adventurous, like a crazy, the world must have
yeah,
seemed infinite, just infinitely huge to people back then. And that's just, to me, really fun to think about.
yeah. There's another documentary called Unknown Cave of Bones that they discovered a cave in Africa from it. Have you watched this one? Like
Yeah,
from
yeah,
another species of human Homo hominids, and it's not Neanderthal. That's not like Homo erectus. It's even older, and they still have burial rights. They had all these things that we assume only humans, Homo sapiens would do, but they were
yeah,
doing it hundreds of thousands of years before we did. So
yeah.
it's like
I mean, and that
imagine
really
what.
blows the time
Yeah,
scale out. So
yeah,
even if you only believe in 1% of this sort of time scale expansion of us being interesting, even the
yeah,
1% is like add 100,000 years of interestingness onto the human history. That's such a tiny percent of the actual scale, but 100,000 years, I mean,
yeah.
of people kind of
Imagine.
running around doing interesting stuff, that is
Yeah. Oh,
so unfathomably huge that the
yeah.
stories and the
That's
cultures
the
and the
stories.
dramas and the
Imagine the
languages,
stories.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just goes on, and the idea of wizards and warriors and like cool woman chieftains and like the great hunt and
Yeah.
wars and weird caves and all languages that
Yeah.
rose and fell and all of this
And
stuff.
and there's
It's
yeah.
crazy.
And there's so much variety too, because like we study history, and one of almost like a standard rule is that the more language there is in a region, the more potential for conflict. So every continent would study that. But now in South America, a curiosity, like South America is the continent with the largest number of languages in the world. We have more languages than any other continent. And strangely, in a region that we had like 5 or 7 different original people with different languages, and they were not warring each other. They were cooperating. They were trading, things that were not so common in other parts of the world. So
Hmm.
even we have to be open to other kinds of experience. Like we always assume, oh yeah, things work like this because that's how human civilizations have always worked. No, fuck no.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a million different permutations, and we
yeah.
probably will never know even a 1/100th of a percent of those permutations.
Oh
So I
yeah.
think the fun is just, again, like giving the benefit to the human race and saying, wow, we must have done so much crazy stuff that no one will ever know about. And
Yeah.
that
And
to
we
me
can
is
make
like a
stuff up
root
for
of
RPGs.
weirdness and
Yeah,
of excitement and
yeah,
imagination.
yeah. And we get to make all this weird stuff on RPGs because, well, we don't know. We might have lived like this. Who cares? Let's
Yeah.
make shit up. Brandon, talking about role playing games now, do you see RPGs as something intrinsically weird? And if you do or don't, what would you say is your favorite part of RPGs, whether you see it's a weird part or not?
Well, I think they can be quite strange and they can be totally not weird at all. I think RPGs are somewhat unique in that they kind of have a very wide scale of how you can engage with them. Like you can read the weirdest novel imaginable, and it really doesn't make the activity of reading that novel weird in itself because reading a
That's true.
novel is almost the same every time, whether you like or dislike the novel. The activity itself is quite similar almost every time. But with our crazy hobby, you could basically be playing something very familiar, like almost like Monopoly, with a friend, or even more familiar, like Sorry or Parcheesi. Like really fundamental sense of a board game, and sort of move pieces by rules, and these pieces kind of interact, and there's sort of victory and defeat in different mixtures. But then on the vast other end of it, you have speaking in character, you have like feeling emotions of a character that's outside yourself, and you have like the whole crafting aspect, and building models, and then like describing different rivulets of history and future that are relevant to what's going on this sort of board game. So like that, to me, the extreme form of the hobby, which I imagine me and you are quite into,
Yeah.
I think is somewhat unusual and a little odd, and I think could strike some people as like, what are you guys doing in this room?
Yeah.
Whereas I think the board game version of role playing would not be seen as odd at all. But that said, the more that time is going on, the way that the internet has been changing things, I think even the most invested kind of hardcore weirdos of role playing are really not seen as strange anymore. I think the idea of the nerd who gets beat up sort of for
Popularity.
being
Yeah.
into strange things, I really think it's kind of just almost all but gone. I think people are bullied over different things nowadays. Not
Yeah.
not like in my day, when just like, being into fantasy, being really
Yeah.
even reading comic books in my day was enough to be considered like a geek, like in a negative way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
way beyond that part. So I don't really think role playing is seen as strange anymore.
Well, I think it's a little bit different, at least in the US, that RPGs are really, really popular, right? The biggest show on Twitch is Critical Role. People see playing uh, a lot easier. And the image of the geek, the nerd, as you said, was popularized, by pop culture. What's the name? The Big Bang Theory. So
Yeah,
people learn to accept the image anymore. But at least for me here in Brazil, still like the act of playing and what is a role playing game, that you have this book. Oh, is this the game? Yeah, is this the game? But you can't play with just this. Like you won't open and start playing. You have to create something outside of this to
yeah.
play, or you need another. And people are like, oh, I can't just open and play. No. And, oh, can I play? But no, you can't play by yourself. Some games you can play by yourself, but some you need other people, and people have a hard time, understanding how all these games are books, but at the same time, all of them play differently, and
It's like, what is going
it's
on
a
in
hard
here?
yeah, it's a hard concept for someone that doesn't play role playing games to grasp, because when you buy a board game, you open the box and you play the game.
And you
And
go, yeah.
sometimes you can buy a box set RPG and you open and you won't start playing. You have to read and you have to create and you have to do all those things before you start playing. So for
Hmm.
them, it's like, yeah, I don't see it. You mentioned reading as something that it's like you can read a weird story, but the act of reading isn't weird. And it kind of just reminded me of a book that I just bought because people say it's fantastic. It's called House of Leaves, which
Oh
is
yeah,
like a horror, and you explore the book and you have to change it sideways, and
yeah.
it's a weird reading experience, right? Have you had any contact with House of Leaves?
I did read House of Leaves. I absolutely loved it. I found it to be quite scary too. Uh,
Yeah,
it-
I've heard
it's
great things
yeah,
about it.
it's kind of it's scary in not in like a monster's coming to
Unsettling
get you
way,
way,
like.
but it was scary like in a makes you feel that dissolution of the senses or of the mind a little bit. You feel the dissolution happening where you're even wondering if you remembered the part you read earlier correctly as you're
Wow.
starting to get into some of the other parts. And that is a weird feeling. Like, did I
Yeah.
miss something in the other part? Like, I thought this person was that person, or like, I thought this whole thing was like over there. It's here now. Like, that is a weird, really I love that book, and I know that book has a lot of people that absolutely adore it. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, really a
I've
fun
heard
experience.
great things, and
Yeah,
I'm wanting to check it out and see if you can steal something for role playing games. Like, do you see anything like that you could draw to make, I don't know, horror or unsettling gaming experiences with
man, I don't know
from House
when.
of Leaves?
I think there's definitely an area that's gray, and me especially, I hope to be kind of playing around in that gray area more and more, like with my most recent book. But when it comes to the apprehension that comes from something like House of Leaves, you have a really tall order to fill if you're also trying to relay to someone how to create your own expressions here. Like, if anything, House of Leaves is almost the opposite. It's so oppressive on you. It doesn't even let you interpret like consistent reality. It
Wow.
it like insists that you now look over here. And you're kind of like, but I'm not done looking at that other weird scene. Now it's kind of like there was something in the back that I hadn't seen yet. And it's like, it doesn't matter. We're over here now. And like, I think
Wow.
that would be hard to do with any sort of continuity like you kind of need
Yeah.
in role playing. But that said, if you have the source material separate, so like House of Leaves could live over here, and then we could have a separate piece over here
Oh
that
yeah.
says, here's how to exist inside the world of House of Leaves. But I would need to talk to you in a somewhat coherent way. I think we've seen like with some of Zach Sabbath's writing, like the Blue Medusa stuff, which isn't talked about a lot much anymore these days. But
Yeah.
some of the fever sort of drug induced kind of psychosis as a writing milieu is very hard to pull off in a way that's productive for the reader. Like,
Yeah.
the reader
I
almost starts
remember.
getting mad
Yeah.
at you. You're kind of like, the reader's getting angry, not
Yeah.
having fun. And
Yeah. And it
so
sometimes
that's a
it can
very
get,
fine line.
yeah, and can get to a point that you read, a module. You mentioned the Blue Medusa. I find it very interesting to read, but I think very very hard to play. Some of those really out there, and it's very interesting. But when you introduce to the table, uh, it's something that I usually draw one encounter for here and there, but use it all at once. Sometimes it can be too much for some players.
Right.
At
But
least
yeah,
for mine, it was
he
like,
was
yeah,
definitely on to something. But the very thing that made him uniquely creative, I think, also devoured him. He didn't prove to have a sustainable voice, and I think there's a lesson in that. That if you toy with that chaos too
yeah,
closely, it can
yeah.
just eat you up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're doing the right thing. Like, you go to sleep at 9 and wake up at 6. You have a normal life. That's one of the advice from the book that I swear by, which is Still Like an Artist, that says for you to be creative in your work, you have to be boring in your life, because we always have this image of it's better to burn out than to fade away, and it's
Uh,
not.
no,
It's better to
no,
see your
burning out
children
sucks.
grow. Yeah. Yeah.
Besides, that was the Kurgan who said that from Highlander, and he wound up toast.
Yeah, it's an image that the media sells of an artist, but it's not healthy. It's not good even for the work of the artist, right? Because
I
it's,
could not agree more. And the way
yeah,
that we're sold that image of
yeah,
chaotic fugue being cool, it is destructive, I think, to a lot of creative
yeah,
people.
and
I
there's a
think
lot of
the real disciplined
great,
life of creativity, I think, is very, very little
yeah,
seen in media.
yeah, but also we have great artists that have this more uh controlled life, more moderate. They do the stuff, they do the dishes, they wake up, they eat well, and they're very successful. But we don't talk too much because it doesn't sell papers, it doesn't sell
Correct.
clicks, because
Yeah.
oh, this is great artists, they have a very boring life, see how it is. No, they won't talk about it.
Yeah.
But it does exist, and you don't have to be this like explode everything and call attention, and you know you don't. You can sit down, do your work, and live your life, and also inspire others by doing that, because it is. I don't know.
I
It may
love it.
not be as seductive, but it's very rewarding in a way too, right?
Well, and I
I don't
think
know.
we've got in modern times we've lost track a little bit of the line between living and transmitting. And so it
Yeah.
almost feels like if you're doing something that's not worth showing everyone, that somehow that's less. And I think that's really bad.
Oh yeah,
I really think
for
it's
sure.
great to do stuff in life that you don't show to anyone. And it is your little shit that you're doing, and you don't need to
Yeah,
take pictures, you don't need to take a video, you don't need to anything.
exactly.
You're just doing your weird little shit and like
For you.
nobody's ever gonna
Yeah.
know, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Do you have something like this, like a hobby, something that you do and make just for yourself, and
I think it would probably be the sort of like the boxing kind of side of my life, the kind of like fight training side of my life. I
mm,
really don't talk about that with
yeah,
anybody. And like the struggle that it has taken me to come from where I was in 2008, where I almost got killed. Like
yeah,
I got
wow,
it was really, 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 really bad. Um, and also, it completely devastated my whole life structure. Like the hospitals and everything, like took everything I had. So
wow,
I was just
yeah,
completely wiped out. Like, and then the journey back from that, like financially, with the people around me, physically, where I lived, the jobs I was doing, like everything changed. And to come all that way to now, I really do not tell the world anything about any of that stuff. That's my stuff. And I've noticed a lot of people like
yeah,
to, take pictures and film themselves and stuff in the gym and everything. Even though I am a diehard like fight training person, I don't do any of that. I would say that's like my private hobby that I love doing that I don't ever broadcast really at all.
yeah. Although, to be honest, like that's a very inspiring stories. I would love to hear more about it. You know, seeing because it's great. Like we always it's terrible. It's kind of I feel kind of selfish, but I mean, we always think we're having in a bad situation, and we hear about these people that have gone through so much, and have risen, having become better, having improved their lives, and having toss that aside and then become something greater, and
Yeah.
it kind of make us feel like, yeah, we can do that. And I don't know. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but at least what you shared here for me is so important, and probably there's a lot of people that don't know what you have been through, and it's great to see uh, where you are right now. It's exciting.
Yeah, cool. I mean, this is, I guess, I'm right there with you too on the sort of the scale of things. Like right in the beginning, I spent, oh geez, I don't know, maybe 4 months in a wheelchair. Like I couldn't even walk, and really, it took me more than a year to walk again. Um, but I'll tell you, there is one way that you can get massive fucking respect for people in wheelchairs. Spend some time in one. like, like I have
Wow.
so much respect and almost like fear of the kind of the courage and the grit that it takes for people who are in wheelchairs, the rest of their life and stuff. And I don't think
Yeah.
they get a lot of respect in our culture, and they get maximum respect from me, again, because what you describe as this kind of this spectrum. It's like whenever you think you're kind of, wow, I really have it hard, there's always one step above and one step below that are
Yeah.
worse or better. It's always there, no matter where you are on the scale. It's kind of like, the old saying that no matter how much you know, there's always someone who knows a little less and someone who knows a little more, no matter where you are on the scale of knowledge. And that whole experience gave me a massive appreciation for that whole sort of spectrum. You realize, just kind of try to stay and do your best. Try not to compare yourself as much as possible
Yeah.
because there's plenty to deal with right here.
Oh yeah. Brandon, you seem like a very resilient person, a very determined person. How did you? Do you agree with that? First of all,
Absolutely.
uh,
Yeah, I'm
would
tough
you
as nails,
say
man.
how did you learn that? How did you acquire this skill or this talent? Did you learn this from how you grew up? Did you adopt any kind of philosophy? Where did you
Wow.
got this from?
I mean, I guess like everybody, I owe a debt to, like my folks and how I was brought up and stuff like that. Like everyone in this world. So I can't like take any credit. But I guess, I did have a somewhat tough time as a kid getting beat up all the time. Um, I guess I was a sort of a late bloomer in a way. So I was like a really small kid. Like I was sort of scrawny all the way like into college. I was like real small. And I
Hmm.
didn't really sort of grow until I was like 25. Which I know that's really weird, but that's the truth. And especially when uh, I had my parents moved across town when I was at a very kind of critical age, when I was like 13. And we moved from where I had grown up, at least for part of my life there. We moved to the other end of town, which was known to be a little more uh, an
Rough
older
around the
part of
edges.
town, a
Right.
little more of an edge to it. And
Hmm.
so I went away from everyone I knew into this new environment like in seventh grade. So a relatively
Wow.
volatile time. And
Yeah.
I tried to sort of just keep going, to try to keep being me. And, well, what's the first thing you do when you move to a new school? Join the chess club, right? Like, I mean, like find the other people. And when that happened, I don't, just because of the times, this was the 80s. It just went really badly. And I like sort of I think I came off wrong. I may have presented myself as too confident or something. And I got to tell you, Diogo, I got the tar kicked out of me
Wow.
day after day for almost 2 years. And I don't mean like getting pushed around. I mean, this is 80s style bullying. This is where
Yeah.
you get the shit beat out of you. Like it's no joke. And I know bullying is still a big problem in the world, but I don't feel like it's quite as visceral as it was. But I think it's more mental nowadays.
Yeah, and
But it,
it's non-stop because back then we'd go home and we'd be safe. Now it's internet all day. It's
right,
different.
right.
It's
That's a really good point.
We also had a very very bad time. I was beaten up too, but it's differently bad.
Yeah, yeah. I
More
think
was
it's more.
very would feel would carry the wounds back home, and now they carry the insults in the internet. It's different. Yeah, it's kind of feel the same way. Like because we're beaten there, we're still feeling the pain back home, and they're teased there, but it's still like this mental torture at home. But I know
Yeah.
what you mean. It's tough.
Yeah, so I mean, you're a little bit right. In my day, I could get through this stuff, and I guess what happened is that I was faced with a bit of a turning point, and I chose to sort of be defiant, and it just made it worse, of course. But I guess I learned some kind of a habit or an approach. And that approach has stuck with me ever since. My approach is like, is that the worst you could do? I can do this all day. Like, I loved that
Yeah,
line in Captain America where those street thugs are beating up scrawny Captain America, and he's just like, "Do you want to keep going? Because I could keep going. Like, I could do this until you guys are tired."
yeah,
And I saw that approach, even though, by the way, not an easy road to walk, but
yeah,
it worked. It gave me a feeling that at the end of the day, I could keep going and feel proud and face what was waiting for me the
yeah,
next day. I'm talking the next day, and it's going to
yeah.
be worse because you're standing up to them and you're kind of, you know, you're not really fighting back that much. You're more kind of saying like, all right, come on, let's do it. Hey
You
guys.
won't break me. Yeah, you
Yeah,
won't
you're
break
not gonna
me.
exactly. You won't break me, but I'm not gonna get all crazy on you either. I'm gonna just calmly endure this. So
Yeah,
let's do it.
yeah,
Hey guys,
yeah.
good morning.
It,
You know,
well, it is kind of the passive resistance, and like we learn about all these revolutionaries. It's like, yeah, that's all you can do. I'm still here. You won't beat me. I'm not going anywhere,
yeah,
and that's great, and that's a great example. And
yeah. And
you
I
know,
think also there's one more thing about resilience that is something that I learned firsthand, not about myself, but about other people. Is that when I was, all, broken and messed up when I got into my accident and everything, the people that I met were of such a caliber with their toughness that I think that I found toughness that I never could not only not take credit for, but didn't know was even part of my capabilities. Because when
yeah,
you're in those kind of a situation with other people, the strength you can pull from each other is there's really no way to put it into words even necessarily. And I wouldn't wish this discovery on anyone. Like
yeah,
you don't want to
of
know
course,
about
yeah,
this.
yeah,
This is something you do not want to experience. But if you do have to experience it because of, some calamity, and I think there's a lot of stories that people tell about this, is you find more there than you thought you
yeah,
would find. And it's it's like mind expanding, And so ever since that, I refuse to bend. There's now it's at a different level. Like I absolutely refuse to yield now. Like there's no quitting. Like because of what happened in the hospital, over those many weeks and months, and like
yeah,
getting to know the person next to you, that is like it's just huge. It's so much more than what's just in you. And that's why a
yeah,
lot of times on the internet I'm always talking about like this is all about like us, like it's the person you're talking to in this
yeah.
moment, not necessarily who's watching you from afar. It's the person that's right in front of you. Like that's where your energy goes, and that's what's most important. So that's kind of my whole like spiel about resilience, I guess.
Yeah, it's great, and thank you for sharing with us the story and how you learned this through this, and to set it, to set an example too. It is something that we learn through emulating others, and in having a ultra creator we admire and inspired by work, and having get to know them outside of the work and see how they can be also inspire us to do our best and try the hardest that we can. It's great. It's fantastic. So thank you for doing that, Brandon.
Yeah.
Uh, do you have any kind of creative ritual for when you start doing your work, when you sit down to either draw or to write?
Uh,
Anything like you put a funny hat, music, or you have toys around you, or you put on shoes to simulate that you're going to work, or anything like this?
uh, I've had different ones maybe over the years, but I think maybe it's almost like my creative ritual is the absence of a ritual. I'm a real I don't know, just I guess especially too because I'm completely immersed in it for these past 10 years. And before that, honestly, I was somewhat immersed, but it was a job, and a job is very different than being an entrepreneur. Um, so as an entrepreneur,
How would
I
you
think,
say is the different? What do you mean you're completely immersed in it now?
oh, well,
And
you can
how
go
is that
home from
different
a
from?
job. I mean, there's
Oh
an
yeah,
end to the day. You know what I mean? No matter how engrossing your job may
that's
be,
true.
you go home
That's true.
and you can also
Yeah,
complain about your job. But
we are always thinking about games, right?
but if you're
Always.
an entrepreneur, I mean, there's no going home, man. You're
You are home.
yeah.
You are home.
So I
Yeah.
think in that complete immersion kind of mindset, I really do like, it's like having a bowl of peanuts on your table. Throughout the day, you might swing by and grab a couple peanuts out of the bowl and munch them down and move on with your day. And that's kind of how my creativity works. I kind of just,
So
I just kind of hit it here and there, and I'll hit it, and then I'll wander off, and then I'll kind of wander over here, and then I'll real quick. get this miniature
Yeah.
done that, wait a minute, wasn't I supposed to be working on something else? Oh yeah. But and in the beginning, I guess you could be a little bit hard on yourself and say like, "Oh, I have ADD or whatever. Or I have too many things going on," which people, beat themselves up with these narratives. But I don't do that. I'm just like, "Yeah, I have like 50 things I'm doing." I get bored with one thing, I kind of, dabble with another little thing. When I run out of energy on that, I'll kind of come back to the other thing. And to me, that's not a problem. That's a great way to be prolific, is
Oh,
just kind
yeah.
of go with whatever strikes you in the moment and don't tell yourself negative things about it. Like, yes, I have a giant Roman army back there that I need to build, but I'll
Yeah.
I'll get to it when it's the time is right to get to it, and then I'll
Yeah.
stop halfway through, and then I'll wander off and do some writing, and take a walk the dog, and like just kind of a very very formless kind of approach is how I thrive.
Yeah. So you intercalate, those time to work on your creative art while you do everyday life things like take out the trash or clean the house and take care of the
Yeah,
stuff. It's basically what I do too. I do have a day job that I do stuff and I take care of the kid, clean the house. Oh, I have half an hour here, and I'll sit down and write something or
yeah,
read something. Yeah,
yep,
and
yeah, and I
but
think it's a learned skill too, because like
yes,
let's say you are
it
writing
is.
something that's 350 pages, that's 100,000 words. It can feel like such a drop in the bucket to sit down for 20 minutes and kind of dabble, or maybe you read something you wrote yesterday and you're like, that's kind of weird. But you're doing it. you're
Yeah.
you're doing the thing. It just takes a lot of time. You just
Yeah.
got to be patient with it.
Yeah, but if you are consistent, this will come.
Yep.
I love this phrase that says that consistency is more important than intensity, because you can sit down for like 6 hours and write as much as you want, but if you just sit down again after 2 months, that's not much. Like you probably forgot everything you wrote. You have
Yep.
to read it out again. But if you sit down like every day and write 15, 30 minutes and just slowly builds it, like in the end of the year, like you're seeing your work every day, you remember it, so you can grow it more healthily, I would say. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the approach I try to do too, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like the gym. It's like if you go too hard in the gym,
Yes,
you like pop your knee. Like your
exactly.
elbow hurts. And I think
Yeah, I
creativity
yeah.
creativity is exactly the same. If you go too
Yeah.
hard and you want too much, you kind of
I
cook
think
it.
that's for everything, right? Like
Yeah.
not only creativity and exercise, like everything. Like
Yeah.
consistency is more important than if you go too hard or something, you might break it, you might drive them away. Like relationships, like you have to. It's something that I learned, with my wife, my relationship. Instead of waiting those big, commemorative dates, do a big gesture. If you do like small things already, like they'll just you go out and bring one candy that she likes, not day at
Yeah,
all. Just give one
nice.
thing, like small things. Consistency is more important than intensity, because it can get to a birthday and I give her a small present too. But she has been seeing me, like caring for her and loving her in small ways throughout the year. They don't have to wait. Oh, it's her anniversary and then I will do something nice. No, you know,
Amen.
do small things every day, and
Very
that's
well
I think
spoken,
that's for
sir.
everything. Yeah. And we're talking about creative ritual, and then do you identify any place where you see drawing a lot of inspiration from? I say for myself, you know, we were talking about our childhood. I was beaten up at school and at home too by my parents. So I was like my refuge was my room. I would get stuck there and watch cartoons and read comics and read books. So I clearly see drawing a lot from the stuff that I used to consume when I was a kid, I was a teenager. Do you identify any place or any sort of media or
Hmm.
epoch where you draw a lot of your ideas from that you put in your work? I know as a game designer, we always tune it in the universe, what's going on, because we're always drawing ideas from everywhere we can. But I
Yeah.
also have this well of things that I draw from. Do you see anything like this for you?
Yeah, I guess there would be two. I suppose really the first book I ever read was The Hobbit when I was I don't know, four and a half, maybe 5 years old. That was basically
Wow.
the book that I learned to read on. Um, so that formed like an indelible mark on my imagination, which I think it did for a lot of people. The images that Tolkien did are like eternal for me. They're just truths. They're platonic truths in my
Yeah.
imagination. The other big one then would be a long way into the future, which would be right sort of at the end of college. I basically, because of circumstance and just because of who I am, I had to accept I was probably not going to be a scientist. And that
Oh,
may
you
sound
wanted
kind
to be
of
a scientist.
kind of funny, but I was kind of thinking I was going to be like a sort of a creative sort of scientist, and that was not going to work out. I'm not cut out for science. And so when I made that switch, I said, okay, I don't have to be a scientist, but I'm gonna be creative. There was a brief period there where I was between those two things. And this was probably the summer of 1995, to really put a pin on it.
Hmm.
And I think that was the year anyway. Anyway, when I was between these two states, really all I was doing was like playing hockey and riding my bike. And this was the year that I got Chrono Trigger on the PlayStation 1. And I don't think I realized it at the time, but Chrono Trigger like became a creative like truth pillar, almost like at the level of Tolkien in my mind. And I don't even think it was on purpose. I wasn't like, "Oh my god, this is the coolest thing I've ever." It was just some game I played for a summer. Yeah, it was just whatever.
Yeah.
Who cares? It's
It's a
stupid. You know,
fantastic
it's
game,
freaking
though. It
Chrono Trigger. Who
it
cares? This is such a specific
it
weird
sticks
thing.
with you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've
It's a
noticed
great
when I
game. Yeah.
look back at my work ever since then, the last 30 years now, um, there are little ghosts and echoes of Chrono Trigger everywhere in what I do. All the
Yeah.
way
Now
the
that
little,
you say, yeah,
and it's
there's
crazy. The
something.
more I look at it, the weirder it is how I was kind of expressing some of those truths about, fantasy and
Yeah.
sci-fi mixed together. And there's kind of the big sword character, there's a frog guy, there's a robot guy,
Yeah.
there's a girl with goggles, like these little specifics that separately are just whatever, but when you put them together, it's undeniable. It's like, oh, this is kind of like Chrono Trigger. And I'm just like, oh my, I did it again. And then I'll try to make something new and I'll accidentally sort of almost tribute it, or like, kind of homage. And it's really funny because I never meant that to happen. It just it just sort of stuck in my imagination in a
Yeah.
way that I like to go back to those places again and again and again. So that's definitely for me has been a huge origin, was that silly little JRPG on PlayStation, like just with no intention of it being like, oh yeah, this is it right here. I
Yeah.
never thought that. I
Yeah.
just thought it was kind of fun.
Mm. It's just something that gets, lodged in your minds and just constantly feeds us ideas. And
Yep.
and you mentioned Chrono Trigger, and kind of for me, I have this with Final Fantasy VII,
Oh
which
yeah,
was the game that I played a lot, and they have some similar, oranges as Chrono Trigger, and this,
they do.
fantasy with sci-fi and stuff. But I love Chrono Trigger too. I'm super excited because they said they're gonna make, a remake for Nintendo Switch. So I'm hoping that this
Oh,
comes out.
sweet.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you for that little gem. That's great news.
yeah. Brandon, do you have, talked about where you draw your ideas from, but also I like to ask if you have any, artists or creators, whether they are from RPG or from any other media or place, that inspires you in the way they do their work, they approach their craft, or
Mm.
the way they portray themselves in the scene of their work. Do you have anything like this for you?
Oh wow. I mean, that list is insanely huge. I guess if you had to cook it down a little bit so it wouldn't just be this massive list of the zillions of things that I like as far as like authors and artists. Um, wow, I don't know. I mean, as far as like artists, I was hugely influenced by like a lot of the sort of the Filipino ink artists of Savage Sword of Conan. I don't know why those guys are all Filipino. I don't know if it's a freaking coincidence or what, but like um that style that was in Savage Sword of Conan, that it looked like they were working with very little pencil. They're just going straight to the ink. That to me
Wow.
was a really big deal as a kid. And there are several artists in that lineage. I think Alfredo Kappa, or boy, the my favorite one. Now, of course, his name escapes me at the moment, but these guys were huge to me. And then as an extension, and I think really he inherited this style from them, is Mike Mignola. And my stuff is often compared to that, which is ridiculous, by the way, because Mignola is like a light years beyond me. But when I started discovering Mignola's style, it would spoke to me like, oh wow, he's also like not afraid of like big black markers. Like, wow, that's great, you know.
Yeah.
So that kind of encouraged me and stuff. As far as writing, um, geez, I don't know. I guess I come from kind of the old school a little bit, to where my favorites aren't necessarily something that I'm like reading every day, but probably the most formative ones, are obviously on my shelf of like Robert E. Howard and Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft. So I think those three are at such a sort of god level nowadays. It's almost boring to say they're your favorites. But especially like Edgar Allan Poe, reading that as a teenager and stuff was hugely influential on me. Like I almost saw myself being like up to that challenge, because when you're a teenager, you have a very big sense of what you're going to be capable
Yeah.
of. And I didn't realize how truly genius and unique he really is in the scope of the human race, not just in science fiction, and like, so I thought to myself, I could be like Edgar Allan Poe, I could be this kind of scary but smart kind of vibe. And like H.P. Lovecraft, definitely one of my favorites, but to me has none of the humanity that Poe has. Poe is just so human with this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
He's hyper intelligent and yet so human and so kind of scared of the world. And I love that. That really called to me and still does to this day. Like I loved the new movie, The Pale Eye, that had Edgar Allan Poe as a character in it. And I just to see him portrayed, like called out to me. So I've always been sort of chasing him, like, how did he do this? Make it's kind of like an adventure, but it's kind of scary because there's like sort of scary elements going on that are supernatural, but then it's all from this kind of chair, from this like intellectual kind of unfolding that he was capable of doing. And I'm always like in awe of that and trying to do that in my work, of to try to unfold that I don't know if
Yeah.
intellectual is the right word. Maybe erudite is the right word for it. It's
Yeah.
it's like a very carefully chosen set of words that are big
Like
for
a
the brain, but
sage.
also reach your
Yeah.
heart in a way. Like, I don't know, just yeah. So he really
Yeah.
has always blown my mind, even though he's somewhat cliche to call out as a favorite.
Oh, it's a fantastic. It's something that inspires us. Like I mentioned, Jack Vance, the way he builds factions and cultures, and for me, then that Planet of Adventure is a great example. And it's an I get inspired by one of the greats. It doesn't mean I think I am one of the greats. Like we're just trying to simulate and get there. I love
Yep,
this phrase from Still Like an Artist that Kobe Bryant uh, was talking about. Oh, your moves, all my moves are moves that I watched those big people doing. I'm just trying to make justice to them. So
yep.
I think that's kind of what we try to do, right?
Hello Weirdos, this is Diogo Nogueira and I'm back with a word from our sponsors. Me! I just released a new game called Cosmosaurus, in which you play a dinosaur space ranger who protects the galaxy from evil threats such as slime bankers, undead pirates, and Cosmosaurus from a Void Dimension. It's a game with a runes light system inspired by Forged in the Dark and Lasers and Feelings. It comes with a bunch of tables for you to generate content for it. If you know my games, they're really easy to play and they have tools to help you improvise and play with low prep. It's an ideal game for one-shots, short campaigns, and introducing new people to the hobby, and it's a really perfect family game. I play with my kids all the time. It's a game inspired by Saturday morning cartoons. It's really well illustrated by Lucas Kowalski from Poland, and with a great layout by Guilherme Gontijo. It's a really fun game. You should check it out on DriveThruRPG, itch.io, or exclusively in print on exaltedfuner.com. I have many other games there, check them out. All the links are in the show notes, so click there. And let's get back to Weird with our chat.
Yeah, and it's just like an itch to me, and I'm sure you feel this as well. Well, especially with your story about, kind of overdoing it with your creativity. There is an itch, and it just itches, and you're trying to scratch it.
It
And it doesn't stop. So one of the things that I'm kind of known a little bit for saying is like, what's the difference between doing craft and doing art? And the difference is that people doing craft are happy. Like doing art drives you kind of nuts. Like it's an itchiness, and you just scratching and scratching and trying to get to the core of the itch. You wake up the next day and it's itching again.
And it's itching in another place now. We're itching here, and now it's here,
it's
and it's there. Because you want to do I want to do more Primal Quest stuff, but I want to redo my old game stuff, but I want to do new games too. Because I already paid for the cover, so I have 2 games with cover but no game. So I have to write that.
Yep, that sounds like an itchy brain right there.
Brando, you're just releasing and Crawl and Skull, which is your new game, right? And you just mentioned about this, and it's a very unique way, very different from Index Card too, right? It's kind of strategic too. But it's less numeric, less stats based. How can you talk to us a little bit about Crawl and Skull, and what is your favorite weird part of it?
Oh man. Yeah, good ending, I guess. Well, first of all, yeah, it's absolutely opposite from Index Card RPG. Index Card RPG is like a bright, ray of sunlight, and it's real happy and lightweight. And Crown and Skull is very moody and very has a syrup kind of to its sort of tone. Of course, it's a big RPG, and I plan to write within that system here for the next several years. Like I did with ICRPG. People forget I wrote inside of ICRPG for 7 years. So I'm going to be living in this new space, and it's very different. It's a much more detailed game, and it does lean a lot less on the sort of traditional numbers that we think about, and leans more into concepts. But also, I hope that everyone is experiencing this as the books go out, starting yesterday. But it's more than just a sort of a system that I want to put into the world. It's a story, and it's a place, and it's a myth to live inside of. And to me, that is really the frontier that I'm trying to press. And that is not an invention. Many RPG writers have tried this. It's an ideal that RPG readers definitely look for, is like something that is, there's some rules and there's some cool things maybe I could steal in here, but also this kind of, whoa, this part's kind of wild. I kind of want to get in there and bring that into my game. So I hope that everyone starts to discover that this really lives in that mixture between a story and a world and a mythology and a place, as well as kind of ideas of how to run, really honestly, any game. If you run Crown and Skull as it's created, I mean, hey, I'm right here to answer all your questions. But the way that I sort of wrote it and created it, I hope too it shows people pieces they can happily pull out and import right into whatever they might be playing. Because as a person who does that, I wanted to speak to that person.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I read a whole RPG and I'll take 2 or 3 things from it, you know, and that's
Yeah.
not bad or wrong. That's totally the hobby. So I wanted to kind of speak from that voice.
So Crown and School, you made it so people can use it with their own games too. So it's kind of not only a game system; it has setting and it has elements that you can pull and use with your favorite game, or is it very well tied with the rules and you obviously suggest using the rules, right? That you're
Yeah.
made for this. How would you say the rules serve the game and the setting to
Oh,
play it
wow.
better with them?
Well, I guess the easiest answer there would be that Crown like sort of inverts what I see as a broken difficulty curve on almost all role playing games. Sorry, everybody. Sorry, all brilliant writer people. But I see almost all role playing games being difficult at the beginning and then slowly, at least
Yeah,
in theory, um, becoming easier as your character becomes more built, right? And coming from the world of video games, this is so totally backwards. Like, why
it
would you want
is.
it to be the most lethal, like when you're in the tutorial? Like, what is happening here? So, what one of the things Crown tries to do is completely reverse that. So, in the very beginning of Crown and Skull, often you get players who kind of feel invincible and they kind of feel like, is this ever going to pick up? Because, you know, we're kind of, and then the challenge to me as the designer was to make that hit the road. And so that to me is one of the biggest sort of things I wanted to say to the world about how this sort of scary kind of story and setting fit into my rules is that the easy part is when you're like a new adventurer near town and you're like, you know, killing rats and stuff. That is easy. That isn't the super scary part. Like I'm
Yeah.
a wizard, you know, and I just built my character. I'm not going to die in the first session like so many jokes, you know, in D&D about that. But rather it needs to escalate. And that actually right away when I set this as my mission, this is 3 years ago or so when this writing really began. I realized it's very difficult to do. And I'm looking at a
Yeah.
lot of the games I've been playing over the years and new ones coming out, and they all think the opposite direction. Even if we go to like the most recent designs that we're looking at, like MCDM's role playing game. So
Hmm.
their game has a fun idea where as combat intensifies, you kind of unlock your abilities with sort of momentum and energy. And so again, you start at the most vulnerable and you
Like fighting
build with
games.
awesomeness as things escalate to a climactic ending where the director kind of calls cut. Um,
Yeah.
so how do
Yeah,
you
that was I
invert
was thinking.
and
It's
how do you
very
invert this?
very narrative inspired, right? Because
Yeah, and
narratives
I
are like this.
realized I'm looking at like things like D&D and I realized that there are very few aspects of these rule systems that are even capable of escalating the challenge. And this is where some of these sort of corny inventions like lair actions and legendary actions, I think came from is they're like, you guys, we can't make anything hard for anybody. Let's put these huge, you know, play anytime super actions on things. And to me, it felt a little corny. And so I hope that people start to see this is where Crown is trying to press some frontiers. And this comes in really, I guess the most fundamental way is that the foes become terribly fast. So
Mm,
they are outpacing the heroes in some cases 9-1. Um,
wow.
and that adds a level of challenge that I don't think a lot of people have even seen. Maybe since Fantasy Hero in 1985, which had some shares a little bit of DNA with Crown and Skull. It had a capability of doing about a 5-1 as far as maximum foe action versus hero. And so I hope that that inversion comes through the pages to everybody, that we see
Yeah.
that inversion could work, that your first session actually you're kind of going like, wow, okay, is that I mean, I'm never going to be in danger, you know? And your GM's kind of going, yeah, yeah, it's going to be fine forever, you know, rather than the joke we all know about RPGs, which is like, oh boy, we're all dying in the first session. Ha ha ha. And that's just like, oh my gosh. So I actually have a blog post about inverting the difficulty curve. And that
Yeah.
blog post was a big part of the creative thinking that went into Crown and Skull. So we shall see if that really sticks to the wall or not. The proof remains to be seen.
Well, it is worth exploring, even if it's not hugely popular as difficult at the beginning. I have to say that for me, I hope for difficult all the way, the beginning until the end. You know,
I want it
but
all. I
it
want it
is
all to be hard.
it's hard, yeah. Because I mean, we're when you study about game design, they always the flow state is something it's ideally reached there, and it's always say that it is a space that the difficulty and skill are like at par. So it's difficult, but it's not too difficult. We always like testing the limits of player skill, and that's when they feel more engaged and more challenging, and because they see they can surpass a difficult, but they have to work for it. Because if it is too difficult and they can't surpass it, they would just walk away.
Right.
And at the same time, if it is too easy, they say, "Yeah, it's no challenge," and they might walk away too. And that's the real challenge for us as game designers, right? We have to this balance of difficulty and novelty and making them feel capable, and then that's something we explored in a different way, and I'm very curious to check it out for sure.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah. Do you think you have any kind of a style or mark, uh, kind of a creative voice? And if you do, what would you say is the creative voice or your weird mark that you leave in your work? You left index card and chrome and school. And how do people can you identify this is Brandon's work?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, besides just the stylistical steps that I do, um, and I would hope to think the quality of writing that I show through, I guess, mainly through experience. Um, have been writing since I was 7 years old, so 43 years. So, but besides that, um, I do hope that I'm seen as sort of a people's designer. A kind of a have always tried to do everything based on either something that actually happened or interactions with people face to face. That being the root of everything. So not necessarily theory or comparative thinking with other creations, um, or almost like creative inevitability, right? Like the age of this idea needs to come. That's kind of one sort of creative mindset. Um, I, I would like people to see that almost everything I do comes from this kind of face to face feeling of like,
Practical
well,
experience.
for 6 months, me and these three knuckleheads were in this dining room, and there actually some stuff came out of it I need to tell the world about, or, well, I had this conversation and it kind of led to another one and it chain reacted and it led to this. And now I want to polish it up and put a bow on top. And I hope that sort of the way that I've portrayed myself as a brand sort of establishes itself with that tone, that it's a very people first kind of a thing, rather than say industry first or impact even, but more just
Yeah.
like each individual really matters, and like this is all about sort of face to face, like us together, and thank you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you, that kind of a thing. So I hope that over time that starts to stick, that I use that kind of approach, a very personal approach.
Yeah, very, very practical and play focused, right? It's
Yeah.
for play. It's not to philosophize under the work, right? It's just
Yep.
let's sit down and play, and that's how you play. Like the way Index Card do with the scene difficult instead of everything has its own difficult. It's very like let's just play. Don't worry about too much. Don't look things too much, and it's very, very good way to
approach the craft of your work.
Exactly.
Brandon, now we're going more the personal part of the interview, when I ask you about your experiences and things that you like and don't like, not necessarily related to RPGs. We talked a little bit in the beginning of the episode, uh, about meditation, about this pendulum kind of style of person that you morning person here and there. But now I'm gonna ask you, maybe about weird experience you might have had. You talked about daydreaming, and I like to ask people about the dreams. Are you a person that dreams a lot? Do you have nightmares, or like me, you wake up and you rarely forget about your dreams? Because I joke that I daydream so much that I use all my dreams during the day, and gets to the night I have nothing.
Yeah. Well, I have a very right-brained. I know I'm a writer and everything, but I'm a very right-brained person, at least in the whatever that stereotype means. But I have a very sort of fuzzy, maybe you could call it, sort of the way my mind works. So when I dream, I generally dream of like sort of like soupy colors, like just kind of like sort of blobby. I don't know. Or sometimes my favorite dream, let me go to that one. My favorite dream is
Okay.
where I'm laying in the grass and I'm asleep. That is the ultimate dream. Like, and there's nothing going on. There's no thoughts. There's no dream within a dream. It's just like this green sort of grass and just like taking a quick nap. I know that's silly, but maybe I'm like you, where my
Well, yeah.
imagination is so engaged throughout the day that a lot of times
That's
I
your
just dream.
imagination wants to rest at night. Like your
Yeah, it just
imagination
wants to
says,
rest, and it
I'm
just like,
done.
sort of color, just kind of like, kind of melted wax
Yeah.
kind of imagery. Those are I mean, obviously I have bad dreams like everybody else from anxiety and everything. I worry about things just like everybody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I dream in these kind of melted colors most frequently. That's just where my mind, I think, finds rest, is just sort of letting things kind of become blobby and out of focus.
Yeah, I see. And when you go to sleep, do you take a long time to sleep, or do you sleep really well and
It takes
stuff
me
like this?
forever to go to sleep because I live that
Oh
gym
yeah.
life, So
Oh yeah.
if you're hitting the gym like a beast, you're still totally energized at like
Yeah.
9 o'clock, but you got to go to bed because you got to get up early the next day. So you kind of just assume the sleep position and pray that the magic happens.
Do you have any technique to sleep? Like, do you do meditation? Do you like count sheep? Do you listen to white noise or anything to
No, I
help
just
you
kind of
get to sleep?
I'd say that's like sort of one of my thinking times in the day.
Okay.
A lot of times during the day, I'm doing, and I don't spend a lot of time like just doing this.
Reflecting, yeah.
Like pausing for deep thinking. So the two times that I really do deep thinking, I've kind of talked about this a little bit on I don't know, on the internet here and there. One is like right before you go to sleep, and the other one is whenever I go on vacation. Like I love to be on a vacation, find myself a chair, and like think for an hour. And it sounds silly, but it is extremely difficult to sit and think for an hour.
Oh yes,
It's
like
really
having,
hard to do. I mean,
yeah.
you can get distracted and all that stuff. That's all perfectly normal. But to actually think, hey, I'm just going to sit and kind of, run through my head here and kind of work on some thoughts and see where my mind takes me. It's really unusual and
Yeah,
difficult to do. I encourage all people to give it a
especially
try.
now, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially carrying these devil devices with us everywhere we go,
Oh
like
yeah, you
the
can't. That can't
cellular
be
phone.
anywhere
Yeah,
nearby.
yeah. You get
Yeah.
to lock it in another room, and
Yep.
yeah, like
Put it in your
we're
car and
doing
park
this.
your car far
Yeah,
away.
yeah. We're kind of doing this at night when we spend time, after the kid goes to bed, and we sit down with the wife at, in the living room, and we lock our phones somewhere else, so we can actually be together, because otherwise,
Yep.
like, I have to check this one, and then we are lost in this
Yep.
hell phone space. You talked about meditation too, and one thing that I like to ask people about your experience with meditation. Have you ever had, any deep trance or any kind of got into a state of altered awareness and got to a place to experience reality in a different way? Had this ever happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. On a somewhat consistent basis, I would say.
Oh
I think
yeah.
being able to really, I think meditation is largely misunderstood as something that happens or something. I think a really big part of it is just taking time to not do other stuff. Just, but yeah, I mean, if your breathing is feeling good and your focus is on your breathing and like there's a lot of like oxygen getting into your brain, I mean, just right there, that already I would consider sort of an altered state of consciousness. It's like it's spectacular. Anytime your metabolism is really high and then you cross that with stopping and then just hold right there, all that engine power is just going into your head because you're not like, you're not zooming around. And I would consider that as sort of an altered state. But yeah, I've kind of done the various forms of sit still, close your eyes, and take a break from life for 5 to 10 minutes. I've done that really probably since junior high. That's been a
Yeah.
part of my life kind of forever. Um, it was in style, I guess, when I was young. A lot of people were talking about it.
Yeah.
So
It's really in style now, I think,
yeah,
with
I mean, it should be
mindfulness
in
and
style.
stuff.
It's the best.
Every every people are talking about this, and I think it's really helps for me sometimes when I get to the busy state of doing things and I haven't meditated for like 3 days. I can feel the anxiety growing and I
Yeah.
get restless and stuff,
Yep.
and can start thinking about problems. And I realized, yeah, I haven't meditated in 3 days. I have to, do some exercise. And something I was going to ask you, like you mentioned about having all this high metabolism and then stopping for meditation. And did I do meditate after I work out? Is that good? Is that bad? Do you do that
Hey,
or?
I don't know. I am no expert on anything. I have no idea.
Yeah,
But I can tell you that if you can get to a level of intensity with exercise, the hour or two afterward, your brain is just like lit. I mean,
yeah,
you got the stuff, you got the magic.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you are just pumped. I honestly don't know how people can really be creative or really mentally engaged without a lot of exercise. I don't know how they get their blood moving enough, but apparently people are
yeah.
capable of it, just not me.
Maybe spicy foods.
Yeah, spicy
Spicy
food. There
food,
you go.
maybe.
Yeah. But there's definitely
Always.
a state that occurs if you can get your engine revving
Yeah,
hard enough. There is something that happens where you not only become very acute and very focused in, but also you feel very confident or very optimistic. Like things that seemed impossible or too risky or a little crazy or maybe like
yeah,
gloomy, they can seem completely sustainable when you're in that other state, when you're really
yeah.
oxygenated and really energized. You'd be like, oh, it's going to be fine. I got this. No problem.
Talking about that, it's just gonna be fine. Do you use mantras when you meditate or to
No,
to
no,
get into a?
I
Okay,
would consider my meditation like the most minimalistic form, just
okay,
stop,
yeah,
maybe close your eyes and maybe not, and just focus sort of on breathing for a moment. And
yeah,
if possible, look at something that nature made rather than something that people made.
yeah.
If you don't want to
I
close
I
your eyes.
do. Yeah, my favorite kind of meditation is walking, just going to the streets and walking and try to feel the breeze and hear the
Absolutely.
sounds and the colors and feel even the floor beneath my feet, even from wearing shoes. I know if I'm stepping on stone or I'm stepping, on the asphalt or anything. I think it's a very I love walking in a helpful way to meditation, train mindfulness and stuff. So that's
Absolutely.
that's my favorite one. Now, other question about maybe what are really other weird experience that maybe if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But I ask people, you mentioned about your ex, and I mentioned about uh, experience with near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences. Did you had those when happened to you? But if you don't want to talk about it, that's all fine
No,
too.
yeah. I mean, I'm almost out of time though, but
Oh, okay.
um,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. Just there, but my life is insane these days, Diogo. Insane. There are too many things going on with opening this shop. So yeah, I mean, I guess I really am in the near death experience club. I guess I really am. When my sort of accident happened, I don't know, I don't want to be too graphic about it, but I was like lost a ton of blood and like broke a
Yeah.
zillion bones, you know, and like laid there somewhere between life and death for days, you know. So
Did you see anything? Did you like had any of those experiences that people talk about or
I
no?
don't think it was what is commonly. I don't know if there is such a thing as common when it comes to something so unusual, but
Yeah.
for me, I
Yeah.
just felt, the experience I often relay about it is that I felt insanely calm,
Wow.
unusually calm. I mean, it's hard to really explain to someone who hasn't really been to such a place, but there is like massive overload of like pain stimulus. There are overloads of like worry and grief because you've been again, not trying not to be graphic, but sort of like torn to pieces over here. And
Yeah.
that, but you can't move or do anything about it. And you're just there. But you're also not asleep, but you're
Wow.
also not really fully conscious. You're just sort of, it's almost like laying there with your eyes closed. Um, and for me, at least, I felt it was almost sort of slightly scared me a little bit that it felt so calm. It was
Yeah.
extremely calm place to be. There was nothing to work on, nothing to do, nothing to figure out. There was no
Yeah.
one to call, and there was no appointments I was missing.
You're just being there.
it was
Yeah.
just absolute. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to do but just try to live. It's an
Yeah.
all-encompassing hobby when like survival is what you're working on. So
Yeah.
as the days just like kind of blend together one after the next, it just for me at least became incredibly calm. It got more difficult once I sort of woke up. That's when the real struggle truly began. And then your more conscious
Yeah.
mind is
Yeah.
trying to force everything and wants you to get better or wants to understand or wants to make new plans or wants to deny that it's as bad as it may seem. Or, your conscious mind is such a monkey.
Yeah.
Um, but the unconscious mind was so okay with everything. It was just like, just stay steady. It's all right. Just you're right here. There's nothing else going on. And that was surprising to me, but no like crazy tunnels or white lights or anything. I didn't have any of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And Bruno, since you gotta go, I'm just gonna go straight to the last question to end
Great.
up with a more positive way too. And do you remember the last time you felt really happy and grateful for being here and being alive? And if you do, can you share with us when was that and what were you doing and how did you feel?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm definitely a big believer, and I really resonated what you said earlier about not waiting for these commemorative moments. I love what you said, like, getting your wife her favorite piece of candy. Um, I don't want to sound cheesy about it, but I would say
You
like sort of
can, please
the
do.
last moment that I kind of felt that, it was like 2 hours ago. It was like waking up
Nice.
and like having coffee, like feeling like, wow, okay, like everything's handled. There's lots to do today, but things are going good. We got this. I got
Yeah,
to
you're
talk to
gonna meet
Diogo
me.
today.
Was a great, yeah, of
Yeah, I
course.
got this other thing, then we got to get into the afternoon. I got to do that. And oh my gosh, it's Friday already. I got to call, my architect, and I got to, make sure that this happens. I got to get to the gym before it gets too late. And like, this may sound a little hectic or whatever, but I love that feeling. That is like, and I'm married too. And like, I love that morning kind of, let's rev it up. And like,
Begin
we're
the day
kinda,
together.
dogs running around. And to me, I think those little pieces are the pieces that are the best, and the big
Yeah.
ones are great. I love
Yeah.
the big super joy moments, I guess. But I'm kind of with you. I really am a true believer in like life is really about each day being
Consistency.
being
Yeah.
pretty good. It doesn't have to be like
Yeah.
great every single day.
Yes.
But if you're
Exactly.
postponing having a good day because you're getting through a bunch of crummy ones,
Yeah.
that's probably not sustainable and probably not good for you.
No. No.
Like, well, I got to do all this shit for the next 2 years so I can have that one big moment.
Yeah. There's
That,
always gonna have something
yeah.
stopping
So
you.
I don't know if I could give any advice to anybody if I'm in any place to give anyone advice in this life. But to me, that's like a really big changer of how your every week feels. If you're just kind of day by day getting little things that are great, that give you that kind of like, hey, yeah, right on. And then some horrible stuff may happen, and you kind of got to deal with that. And then one more tiny little thing of like, hey,
Yeah, but remember the tiny things. We have to remember the tiny things because it's very easy to focus on the things that went wrong because are the things you have to work on and concentrate. And we forget the small good things that happen through the day. And one of my practice, like every day, I write 3 things that went well for me today. It doesn't have to be big things like, my wife made me a sandwich, or my kid came and gave me a hug or something. Just those small things.
Yep, that's sandwich. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And Brandon, before we go, do you have any last messages to give to the wonderful weirdos out there that are listening to us?
Hey, just if somebody tells you not to do whatever you're doing, you just keep doing it. You decide when to stop. You decide when to stop, not other people.
Yeah. And Brandon, last thing, can you take us out saying the catchphrase of the show? Keep it weird, everybody.
All right. Well, this is Henkerin Ferinale with my man Diogo over here, Runehammer. Great interview. Thanks, dude. And everybody, keep it weird out there.
Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.